I've been talking about grooming gangs since 2014, since meeting people in Rotherham who were telling me the truth about what was going on. I even dared back then to suggest that there was an ethnic link with the crimes that were happening. Well, you can imagine how demonised I've been over much of the last few years. And not just me, many others, some brave journalists, the odd politician here or there. But what was, I thought, really interesting about Baroness Case's report is when she made it clear that a substantial proportion of the suspects in these grooming gangs, rape gangs, choose your own terminology, that a substantial proportion are non-UK nationals and asylum seekers, which could mean young men crossing the English Channel, of which there have been another 450 just today alone. But, finally, something has happened, because to begin with, Keir Starmer, or Two-Tier Keir, as many of us call him, he would not contemplate a full inquiry with full statutory powers. This is what he said just a few months ago.
And when politicians, and I mean politicians, who sat in government for many years, are casual about honesty, decency, truth and the rule of law, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right.
So we're all far right if we want an inquiry, until this week.
When you said to me in January in that hospital, you said that it's a far-right bandwagon if you're calling for national inquiry. I know you're talking about politicians, but a lot of GB News viewers and listeners were also concerned, and they felt you were calling them far-right. Would you perhaps regret that remark?
I said expressly, politicians, and I mean politicians, and I was expressly calling out politicians who had been in office and done nothing, and it was them that I was criticising.
It's not a far-right issue, is it?
No, and I was certainly wasn't criticising your viewers.
So it's OK, we're not far right now. And he even went further. He said there should be no no-go areas. Let's see him.
On the grooming gangs inquiry you've announced this week, will that inquiry be allowed to investigate public officials who covered up the scale of the criminality, councils, police, even MPs?
I want that inquiry to go wherever it needs to go. Yeah. Having set it up on a statutory footing, it is my strong belief that that inquiry needs to go wherever it goes. So there won't be any no-go zones so far as I'm concerned.
OK, so I'm pleased that he's U-turned. I'm always pleased when the Prime Minister U-turns. He seems to be making quite a habit of it these days. But when he says there'll be no no-go zones, when we're told we'll get to the truth, what I wonder, firstly, we don't know who will head up this inquiry. Will it be another one of his human rights lawyers, judge mates? But the bit that concerns me is the scope of the inquiry. Just have a look on your screens at this piece of text. A national inquiry coordinating a series of targeted local investigations. I thought this was a national inquiry. Yes, a series of targeted local investigations in local areas with powers to compel local organisations and they'll consider evidence and data to decide the first local areas for investigation. So we're almost back, folks, I think, to where we were when originally he'd said to the House there'll be a series of local inquiries. I worry that the scope of this inquiry won't be long enough. I worry that the Home Secretary has said it will take 3 years. So I wonder whether they could just push it past the date of the next election. And I want to ask you at home, is this inquiry a con? Are we being led up the garden path? Give me your thoughts. Tweet Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com. I have my fears. I'm joined by Katie Lamb MP, a new MP, just 1 year in the House of Commons, represents the Weald of Kent, lovely part of the world, and is an assistant opposition whip for the Conservative Party. And I'm joined by Lord Maurice Glasman, Labour peer, he of Blue Labour fame. Now, it's really interesting because this Prime Minister, I mean, basically, he keeps shifting his positions. He keeps U-turning on everything. But that's a good thing in some ways.
It's a very, very good thing. I think Nigel should take a little more credit here. I mean, we worked here. Do you remember the number of times we've been on here? You since 2000. Me, I've heard about this in 2011, and I've been spitting blood about it. This is an abomination, a sin. I think he's got it, and I think we've got to give Baroness Casey credit as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Really. So this is an example, Nigel, where actually the British state is beginning to smell the coffee and wake up and move. I think it's really excellent. Now you're correct. This trial needs to be televised. That's for starting. It's a statutory inquiry. There have to be powers of arrest. This is like a demon that entered the body politic. The disgust people feel about this is turning them away from politics.
Oh, actually abroad, it's making people wonder what the hell is happening in this country.
Oh, you remember when we went to Trump's inauguration?
Yeah.
It was everywhere on Fox News. But that's not the point. The point is it's real, it's true. And now we've got a national inquiry. Now, I wouldn't be too misled by that. Look, there's going to be a series of... I've gone into it. There's going to be a series... It's a national inquiry looking...
But, Maurice, the scope is important.
The scope is huge.
And I read this out and I'm beginning to worry.
I think you're right, but we've also got the Prime Minister saying today no-go areas for the inquiry.
Yeah, but what he says and what he does are different things, and you know that as well as anybody.
No, I really know that. What I'm saying is we've now got the national inquiry, and I think we've got to keep the pressure on. That's the point. This has got to be straightened out.
Katie Lamb, welcome. First time on the programme.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, Kemi Badenoch today was, doing a press conference and blah-de-blah. But the truth is, she was a minister in charge of women's affairs for 2 years, didn't mention this once in the House of Commons during this time. And I thought it was interesting that Baroness Casey herself has attacked the Conservative Party, not for their record, that was what the Prime Minister was doing, but for opportunism. And I just wonder, I mean, it's not very credible for the Conservative Party now to be tough on this issue, is it?
Well, there's no question. Nobody more than me thinks that the last government made some mistakes, and it would have been brilliant if they'd commissioned a national inquiry. I wish that they had.
But you weren't there.
They had.
You weren't there.
No.
But Kemi was.
But the last government actually did a lot more on this than any government before them. Suella Braverman in particular, whom actually I did work for, was very brave on this. She started saying in public the sorts of things that, as you said, you've been saying, that there was
a racial element. Is that why they sacked her?
That... not as far as that is not information that I'm privy to. But there was a real phenomenon of Asian, predominantly Muslim, predominantly Pakistani men grooming and raping young white girls. And even for the Home Secretary to say that at the time was a really big thing. She started the Grooming Gangs Task Force, which has been responsible for the arrest of over 1,000 people. Sajid Javid in 2018 started to collect ethnicity data for crime. It's not complete, but, at the time, David Lammy said he was bringing the Office of Home Secretary into disrepute. This has been really difficult.
Baroness Casey says that in many, many areas there is a lack of data for fear of being thought to be racist.
There's another really interesting thing, which is fake data from the civil service. This is a really important issue.
Explain.
What was happening was when there were these inquiries, and this is the point, all of us have got to really repent and confess. Neither Conservative nor Labour faced the reality that there had to be a show trial.
Yeah.
There had to be a public trial where we got to the truth and to the bottom of it. And all these things were all gimmicks. But the thing with the data is that the civil service was actually putting in false data, that there was no link to ethnicity, this was... And the other thing is, what an insult to Indians and other people to call it South Asian.
I know.
This is out of order.
I know.
There's so many things to be got straight, but the really important thing, Nigel, is that the civil service were actually putting out, just like the Soviet Union, absolutely, and this was fact. So if you challenged it, you were considered, we know this experience, a populist, dog whistle. No. What I think we all want is a healing in this. And the girls to be given justice and honour.
We only get a healing process if we first get the truth out on the table.
That's the absolute fact of the matter.
Do you see my concern, Katie, when I look
Absolutely.
at this repeated use of the word local?
And
I worry what the scope might... I mean, it could be my fears are premature, but I just somehow... I can't believe that Keir Starmer's genuinely done a 180 on this.
And if it's all going to be local, even if they're then going to knit together all of these local insights, what that's not going to tell us is, what did the Department for Education know? There's a suggestion that they knew about that because they wanted to shut down Andrew Norfolk's reporting. What did the Home Office know? Maurice has already mentioned civil servants there produced a report
But Morris's
in
point
2020
about deep complicity is absolutely right.
So we have to make sure that all of these parts, and again, what Morris says about all parts of the British establishment.
Are you confident? Are you confident this will happen?
I am worried that we will see an inquiry with the full scope that we need. And I think the only way that we will is if people like us keep agitating for it.
No, I think that's right. I mean, Morris, here's my worry.
Yeah.
You know, the COVID inquiry. Now, you know, I think the way we handled COVID, possibly the worst peacetime error of any British government ever, certainly by lockdown 2 and 3 and all the rest of it.
Nobody wants to talk about that.
But here we've got the COVID inquiry going on year after year after year, not really addressing any of the issues the public care about. Here is my concern, and I'm going to ask you what you think we can do about it. You know, when the Home Secretary fairly casually says it'll take about 3 years, what's to say this doesn't go on way beyond the next general election? What's to say that this is not a can-kicking down the road operation?
OK, so this is politics. We've got to be really wise and we've got to draw on our experience. It's been an enormous victory for truth and for justice to get a national statutory inquiry. This is the point.
Okay.
It's all the stuff before was voluntary and advisory. This is statutory, which means that we can then move to arrests. This is the vital thing. And there's going to be huge forces opposing this. They have been in charge.
People with things to hide. And lots of them.
People with things. You should read Polly Toynbee today in The Guardian. She's still going on about not having a culture, like as if this isn't a really huge and very, very, very... Without dealing with this adequately, I think trust in Westminster will disintegrate. This is that big.
But that's my question. My question is, are they going to get this done in time?
So what I can give you, I'm a Labour politician, and I can give you my absolute pledge that I've got my eyes on this, absolutely. And together, all of us have got to do this in a... All I'd say to you, Nigel, this is way beyond partisan politics. This is a matter of absolute...
And that was Casey's point, actually.
No, really, and I think that's true. And we should all work together to ensure that this is clean and public and truthful. And I think the space is there now to ensure that it is. Because if you think people aren't interested in this and keeping their eye on it, there's going to be no... Now they've got the National Statutory Inquiry, they can't remove it.
Morris a bit more confident, I think, than you are, Katie, on this.
And it's not just the inquiry that worries me, it's also the investigations. So one thing that I call for, that colleagues in the House have called for, is an NCA, a National Crime Agency unit, not just to investigate the perpetrators, obviously that's important, but to investigate officials, social workers, elected local politicians, police, everybody who's part of the cover-up.
Nigel, if I may, just for 1 second, this is the crucial thing. We've got to interrogate the cover-up.
Not one person persecuted for the cover-up.
No, not one person for the...
Morris, absolutely. I agree 100% with what you say.
Great.
I just don't know whether it's actually going to happen. Very interesting to get your
reactions. We're not innocent
reactions.
Bystanders. We can act.
No, we'll all act and we'll all put pressure on, but I
don't trust
Keir Starmer as far as I could throw him.